Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Jai Ma. For people that are on YouTube, you'll see 9 different faces. For audio podcast listeners, you won't see them, but you will hear them. Everyone say hello at the same time. Let's see if this works.
Hello.
Hello.
Awesome. So yeah, this will be a good YouTube one to watch if anyone is ever going to watch one on YouTube. This is the one. So this is welcome to our podcast, Awake Minute by Minute. This is not really a minute. This is the credits sequence because we are on our last episode of this series. I'm gonna start crying. No, it's been an emotional one. People are welling up. Yes, so we're literally just going to talk about the last few minutes of the film where it's really Guruji says a few lines, his actual voice. He says everything is Brahma, everything is spirit, everything is light. And then we have a couple of lovely songs from George Harrison that takes us into the credits sequences. So we'll discuss all of those things and hopefully do that in an hour. So firstly, let's say hello to everyone. Firstly, Marguerite, how are you? Marguerite is our biggest fan. She's she leaves the biggest essay long comments, which we all absolutely love reading. Marguerite, how are you today?
Oh, I'm disappointed. I was just getting ready to send volume 2. But good to see everybody. I've enjoyed all you host, so thank you all so much. You've contributed to helping me develop better habits.
Awesome. We obviously have Chris and Mike, but you've heard enough of me, Chris and Mike, I'm sure, for the last 100 hours. But we have Carolina from Brazil. She's been with us in multiple episodes. How are you, Carolina?
Hello, everybody. All good here in Brazil. Good to be back. And first time that Mike is not a host when I'm in the show.
Great to have you. And we have Grace. Grace, say hello. How are you doing? Also been in multiple episodes.
Hi, it's good to be back. I'm well, thank you.
Nice to see you. And then we have Riva, our marketing expert from the London Centre. I'm glad there's another London Centre person here representing.
Hi, it's great to be back.
Riva's doing lots of things for the London Centre, including a play which involves her whole family, Sunday school children and her husband. She's roped her husband into doing the cauliflower robbery, which by the time this is released, it would have gone perfectly well, Riva, and your acting career would have gone off to a flying cauliflower start.
It's not going to be understated, let's put it that way.
Lovely. And we have Danish. Danish, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing very well, thanks. Just got back from a silent retreat in the Swiss Alps where we were practicing a lot of Kriya Yoga. And so it feels very good to be back on the show today.
Lovely, Danish. Thanks for coming back. Yes, I also came back from a silent retreat in our retreat centre near Oxford. It was very, very lovely. We have Tehiel, who's in Mother Nature. Tehiel, how are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm here in Argentina, enjoying your company. So happy to be here. Thank you all.
Very good. Very good. So the first section, let's discuss the first section. So we have really the music starts and there's some music and a build up is to Guruji. And this is after his Mahasamadhi. And after his Mahasamadhi, so this is like a kind of an angelic voice, in my opinion, that comes out from the ether. And he says, everything is Brahma, everything is spirit, everything is light. And, I remember things like Satchitananda, ever conscious, ever new, bliss, consciousness, that feeling when he says that. It was quite a very moving way to end pretty much the film, isn't it? But I found some good readings about this because the term everything is a common one in Guruji's writing. So he likes to refer to lots of things in this everything is element. So Mike, if you open the everything is card, can you read the first paragraph?
Absolutely. the universal everything, is made of the singular consciousness of God. When a spark of that consciousness is individualized by God, it becomes a soul, capable of ultimately expressing the God image in which it is made. In essence, the soul is perfect and complete, an exact reflection of God's ever-existing, ever-conscious, ever-new bliss. We all are one of those.
Sat Chitananda, as we said.
Mhm.
Yes. Chris, do you want to? So the next is interesting. So this is taken mostly from the second coming of Christ, and as we know, the second coming of Christ talks a lot about Christ and also common topics such as evil and overcoming evil and the satanic forces and then embracing love. So this is interesting. So he relates evil in this everything is. So Chris, do you want to carry on?
Yes, and can I just say, if there's a paragraph out there that will throw up questions, that what Mike just read out is a paragraph that will do that. Like, it's just such an explosion of information and wisdom just in that one paragraph that Yogananda's given us. Amazing. So evil, God must have a cause to create his desireless desire, and there must be a rationale for the existence and behavior of a fallen archangel who became a devil, deceiving man and opposing God in ways innumerable. Satan's desire to perpetuate his own existence. Therefore, it can be said that except in the absolute sense that everything is made of one cosmic consciousness of God, there is no evil in the all perfect God. Evil resides in the adversarial force that maintains its realm of influence by the gross obscuration of the true God nature of all created beings. Philosophic sophistry, could convincingly make the case that since the duty of Satan as an archangel. So quite an interesting positive spin on the role of our archangel, that the much vilified angel, which is Satan, fallen angel. Well, to be honest, when I first heard that Satan was a fallen angel, I thought it was quite an interesting concept, because in Eastern thought we don't have such a concept, but we do have Maya. Maya is the illusory force which draws us away from the God consciousness. So I always thought that this was an apt way of thinking about evil, actually, and quite an interesting angle compared to how the East thinks about it. I don't know if anyone uses this as a motivation for their own sadhana, but I think it is quite a good one. Mike? Yeah, it was actually one of the things I really liked about Eastern spirituality was the absence of Satan, kind of the absence of a boogeyman, kind of. And when I read the second coming of Christ, and there was this personified Maya that was called Satan, that is very I don't know, it's described in very great detail. I was like, oh God, no, it's back. But it's I think the more you read about it, the more you have the similarities between Maya and Satan. It's just one is like thought of as a person and the other one is more like a force, I guess.
Chris?
Reading this book for the first time, it was one of the things that drew me to the book, the topic of evil, and how, the original sin and so on. So this really grabbed my attention because growing up in Northern Ireland and the Catholic kind of background of faith, they teach quite heavily, what will happen to if you do commit sin and so on and so forth, and Satan has a big role to play in that. So it was a big part of my life in some ways, and this
doesn't reverse it, but it does make you see it in a whole different light. There was an interesting story that a friend of mine told me, and he's a devotee. It's the person that actually introduced me to Yogananda. He said he was on a silent retreat for, I think, 10 days or something like that in India. And in one of his meditations, he said Satan appeared to him, and he was befriending Satan and almost like talking to him, like, hey, you've got a role to play in all of this. And he said that the whole experience was just so profound that he didn't befriend him quite literally, but he saw the love that he had for God's creation in a whole new light. There was no fear there anymore. So he had this profound experience with Satan in some ways that was blowing my mind at the time. I was just fresh onto the scene of yoga. But it's good to think about these things in different ways instead of the plain duality that is normally presented.
Mm. Yes. Let's think about everything is in the form of love now, which I think most of us will most resonate with. Danish, do you want to read the next chapter next verse that I found in the book, The Second Coming?
Yes, absolutely. As the Father hath loved me, so have I loved you. Continue ye in my love. If ye keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken unto you, that my joy might remain. These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full.
Really, I really love those words. Let's Danish, read that again. I think this could potentially be one of my most favorite lines in the Bible, actually. Danish, do you want to read that again?
The whole verse, or just
just the verse, the whole verse.
As the Father hath loved me, so have I loved you. Continue ye in my love. If ye keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full.
Marguerite, do you want to continue? There's a reason why I asked you to read it out twice, Danish, and hopefully you'll read your verse that I've sent you is the continuation of that.
Yes. Try to imagine the love spoken out of by Jesus in these verses. Close your eyes, put your attention on the heart, and feel the greatest love you have ever felt for another person. Let that love saturate every cell of your body. Now, expand the feeling of love, like an encircling sphere embracing your family, friends, all your loved ones. Feel your love ever increasing. Include in that sphere all the people in your city, then all of your country. Now everything in the world is bathed in that love. The whole earth, the solar system, the far-flung galaxies and island universes. Everything is floating in this vast sphere of love. Feel, meditate on, merge yourself in that love which permeates and upholds the infinitudes of manifestation. A demonstrable presence of God's heartbeat of bliss, setting the pace of cosmic harmony and unity, and known to the devotee as the all-in-all fulfillment.
Beautiful. And I think many of us will have experienced this meditation in some of our services. It's one that is used from time to time. Sometimes it's used as part of an affirmation, but it's certainly a very powerful meditation that we often do as a group exercise in many of our centers around the world. I don't know if any of you have been through that, but it's certainly like when I first did it, like that it forces you to expand your consciousness in like a very gross way, because it talks about like the people next to you and the people in the city, and it goes on and on, whereas you know, if you're thinking about it in a very subtle way, energy, you know, everything is, you know, you're all connected. That's very difficult to do. But thinking about the person that's sitting next to you and imagining him next to you and him being part of you is much easier. So that's why I used to find it really powerful, and I use it very often. Actually, I've actually incorporated it personally into my prayer for world peace. I do this thing. So, for example, when they say, let's think about all those around the world that are in need of prayer, I literally do this exercise. So sometimes, like, you know, before I did this, they sometimes ask you to spend 3 minutes doing this, and I used to struggle to think of the world in 3 minutes, but this helped me to do that. Yeah, Grace, do you have a comment on this?
Yeah, on the SRF YouTube channel, Sister Priya guides this meditation, and that's really lovely. I think it's like a 20-minute meditation on divine love, and she uses this exercise in it, and it's just so beautiful.
We'll put a link to that in the channel, on the description. Yes. Carolina, do you want to continue to the last verse for this?
Sure, yes. The love felt in the heart at the beginning of this visualization is human love. And the love that expanded until it encompassed everything is the universal love of Christ, the infinite love of God. The love that most persons feel for dearest family and friends, Jesus felt for the whole world and every living being. The Christ consciousness that encompasses everything in its love was born in the body of Jesus, in the body of Krishna, in the body of Buddha.
I really love this line because it kind of reinforces the universality of the religion and our deities. So yeah. So so hopefully that was a good segue into the words Guruji majestically spoke. That is, everything is Brahma, everything is spirit, and everything is light. Personally, which of those three elements does one, if you were to use it as an affirmation, which of those three would most resonate with you? For me, it is light. Even though I really like the chants that involve hymn to Brahma, I really like that. Whenever I'm doing or leading a service at the center, I always like to start with hymn to Brahma and always do the Sanskrit version after the English version. But personally, I really like visualizing everything as light. Chris?
I'm with you on the light bit. It's the one that struck me. And I think there's probably a very practical reason for that, is that we kind of know what light is. We could all, if you said, what is light? Protons and coming from the sun, and you could kind of try to loosely describe it in some practical terms, and you can relate it and you can see it in your mind's eye quite clearly. I do like an analogy of the universe, like a projection that Yogananda often has said. It's a projection of consciousness, and it's like a projection screen in the cinema. I think that's one of my favorite analogies that he talks about as well. So that's kind of related to light for me.
Marguerite, yeah.
Yes, I also relate to the light. When I meditate, it just feels like this ocean, like this, and we want to be, the little bubble in the sea. And, I wanted to add in about the fallen angel thing. So when somebody around me has malicious intent, or the vibrations are strange, I've practiced taking on that energy as God energy. It's all God. And then transmuting it and thanking those people for sending me that energy. And it's a lot of work, though. I did get a tip from one of the satsangs on YouTube. There goes my alarm, pardon me. If you have a difficult time loving thy neighbor, ask God to love them for you. And I found that really helpful. And then, eventually it evolved to, I could do it. It's like Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself. And sometimes you just go, even that neighbor, So it's kind of this alchemy thing. And then the gurus, as they'll come and intercede for special reasons. So that's also been useful. But I like the idea of transforming, transmuting, alchemizing all energy into love. What was the other thing I wanted to share about that? I lost my train of thought because I do need to get going.
Yes, that's fine, Margaret. You wanted to say a couple of things. Do you want to say those, or
Yes,
you've said them already?
No, I did not. You know me, so I had to write them down so I do not write a whole Bible long thing here. So, Priyank, there's this quote you've mentioned a few times. You have it with an arrow pointing to your meditation room. Would you repeat that for me, please?
Everything else can wait.
And
Know it
something-
now or in 1,000 incarnations.
Do it now or 1,000 incarnations.
Know it now
Know
or
it.
in 1,000 incarnations. It's just basically, I as an engineer, we like the brute force approach to getting things done. So that's the brute force psychological method of forcing you to get in there, forcing you to go into the meditation.
Well, I've got another technique. It's
Oh,
a
go
little
for
more
it.
nurturing,
Please.
maternal. Okay.
Please.
I got this quote, Chidananda sent it in one of the emails, and it says, it's a Yogananda quote. Joy lies in continually thinking of God. When you wake up, think of God. Pray not only before taking food, but when you are eating and afterward. When you are working, weave the thought of God around that activity. When you are in touch with God, you will see all your desires mysteriously fulfilled. So I have this quote in the kitchen because I am in that kitchen cooking, eating, coffee, tea. I think of God during all these with that note. So I wanted to congratulate you three, Priyank, Chris, and Mike. You have fulfilled one of the primary goals that Yogananda talks about, that we are here for education and entertainment. And your podcast has been that for me, educational, and you are highly entertaining, I must say. And then that's it.
Thank you so much, Marguerite. It's been beautiful having you. And long may our interactions continue.
Let's continue. Bye.
Yes, to be continued. Yes. Marguerite mentioned about joy, and living in that joy. And Guruji's in this minute, he's kind of saying a farewell. But Guruji, obviously, we fully know that that farewell is not really a farewell. It means it doesn't mean that he's left us, and he has left us with the beautiful organization that is Self-Realization Fellowship, and he's also left us with a few promises. So I'd like to go through some words to that effect that Dayamata has quoted. So Tahiel, can you read out the first section?
I'll try it. My body shall pass, but my work shall go on, and my spirit shall live on. Even when I am taken away, I shall work with you, all for the deliverance of the world, with the message of God. Those who have come to SRF or YSS, truly seeking inward spiritual help, shall receive what they seek from God. Whether they come while I am in the body or afterward, the power of God through the link of the SRF or YSS gurus shall flow into the devotees just the same, and shall be the cause of their salvation. The evil living Babaji has promised to guard and guide the progress of all sincere SRF or YSS devotees. Lahiri Mahashaya and Sri Yukteswarji, who have left their physical forms, and I myself, even after I have left the body, all will ever protect and direct the sincere members of SRF and YSS.
In the retreat, thank you, Tahiel, very well read. In the retreat that I just went to, we were just the video element of it. There's always a video that's played one of the talks, and it was the famous talk of Brother Bhaktananda, who talks about cultivating the personal relationship with God. And he was saying that he related the story that's often used where a lady in the chapel, whilst everyone was meditating, she saw Guruji going up to each person, starting from the back of the chapel, just putting his hands next to the heads of each devotee and blessing them. And I thought it was such a beautiful thing, and it's so true. Like, how many blessings do we feel when we join in a group meditation or in a fellowship environment such as what we have here, and it, the words that we just read out it just rings so true for me. It doesn't feel like Guruji has left, even though I wasn't around when he was physically around. Don't know if that's the same experience for you guys. Chris,
we know that Martin Lewis said that he felt this terrible void whenever Guruji passed, and he said he felt that it was a void that seemed bottomless. He said, but then he himself said that, well, you remember that he remembered that Guruji had never broken a promise in the time that he had known him. So he didn't think that he was going to break the promise when he said that, no, I'll be closer to you when I leave the body. When I was in the body. So if it was good enough for Martin Lewis, and he was there with him, spent time with him, it's good enough for me, I think.
Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's like wherever life takes you, and life has this tendency to just drag you in one direction, the other direction, and meditating on Guruji, especially with other devotees, has like this power to draw you back into the center where the peace is, where you can make the right decisions, where you can think clearly. And I feel like that's also a way why he created this organization. So he said at some point in the autobiography, he says like, God is the honey and the organization is the hive, right? And I feel like we're all part of that hive.
Indeed. We have got a honeycomb structure in this gallery view of the podcast.
Excellent. Yeah.
Reva, do you want to continue the words?
Yeah. So not long after that, the full responsibility for leadership of Gurudeva's work fell on my shoulders. When a great teacher leaves this world, it often happens that some different opinions arise as to how the mission begun by the Guru should be guided. Questions arose during discussion of the work on the morning after I became the leader. Should the guidance of the work be in the hands of the householders or monastics? Guruji had told us it was to be with the single-hearted renunciants like himself, but that directive was being challenged by some of the members. True, Guruji's love for all devotees was the same. I felt no distinction. Why be bound by externals? A devotee is a devotee because he loves God, not because he wears, and I think this is pronounced ochre cloth, but my mind was troubled.
And this is, just as a reminder, this is Dayamata. This is Dayamata's words. Grace, do you want to continue?
Sure. Ma continues. That night I sought Guruji's answer by meditating deeply and praying to him. It was very late, and I was still meditating when suddenly I saw my body get up from the bed, walk down the hall, and enter Gurudeva's room. As I did so, out of the corner of my eye, I saw his chadar, shawl, fluttering as though in a slight breeze. I turned, and there stood my Guru. With what joy I ran to him and knelt to take the dust of his feet, holding them close to me. Master, Master, I cried, you are not dead, you are not gone. Death has no claim on you. How sweetly then he reached down and touched me on the forehead. As he did so, in that instant I knew the answer. I must give at the meeting the next morning. Guruji blessed me, and then I saw myself once again sitting upon my bed. The next morning I met with the directors of the society and gave them the answer Guruji had conveyed to me, and his work has been united and growing and growing and growing ever since. Such is the blessing of God.
I don't know how many of you knew that Sri Dayamata, if the autobiography Yogi had continued and the next yogi along the line was Dayamata, then we would have had a chapter called The Resurrection of Sri Paramahansa Yogananda. How many? I did not know that she had experienced this resurrection. And I find it interesting to compare how Guruji approached Sri Yukteswar. He kind of like just grabbed him, hungrily in his arms, and he like just went for the hug. But Dayamata, being so humble that she is, she went and knelt and touched, took the dust of his feet, which was, I think, quite an interesting parallel. It also doesn't say, maybe they had a big conversation about how the events are going to pass, how she is to lead the organization, perhaps, but she doesn't say much about that. We can only guess. Carolina?
Yes, I would definitely go for the octopus style.
Octopus grip.
I don't think it would be that humble. I would just jump. So happy.
I can certainly see you doing that, Carolina. But yeah, Mike.
I personally, I'm not aware of that story, so I'm really happy that we're reading this, and it really adds something for me. And it's just so amazing that you have a question and then Guruji appears to you at night, and I feel like that's like, if you really work on the relationship, at some point it is like that, right? That love comes through, and yeah, I find that such a amazing moment.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad we could share that. Hopefully, listeners also found that story useful. And I obviously thought it's important to go through that, because this film ends on a somber note, and some viewers of the film may think that this guru has left his body, so I need to find one that's not in his, that's not left their body and that has his physical form. But as is beautifully described here, that was really his life, and his mission was the beginning for us disciples. Chris?
We've as a group talked about some decisions, and how should we do X, Y, Z, and we've maybe said on more than one occasion, okay, well, I think we need to go and pray to Guruji and ask Guruji for guidance, and that really is a great way to conduct your life. If you have a big event going on, you're not 100% sure, there's a few paths you can choose to go down. It's such a great example, isn't it, that we just read. You may not physically appear or manifest in front of you, but you may be downloading information that you're not consciously aware of. And we should maybe, it's a reminder to me, do it more often. Dummy, he's there with us all the time.
Indeed. So next, what happens in the film is George Harrison comes in with the beautiful song "Give Me Love." It's Chris absolutely loves this song. Chris, I think you said you were willing to sing it.
No.
A cappella.
Yeah.
Come on, Chris.
As soon as you said that, Priyanka. See, if Margarita was here, she'd be loving it. But no, I honestly wouldn't do that to people, I think is the answer. But what a beautiful song. And it's just filled with it's just an outpouring of love, isn't it? That song. I actually went and found the lyrics just to, even though you can hear it quite clearly, but give me love, give me peace on earth, give me light. There's the reference to light. Give me life, keep me free from birth, give me hope, help me cope with this heavy load.
I think we
Trying
did the
to-
tune, Chris.
No,
Yeah,
if
keep it going,
everybody,
Chris. Come on.
if everybody does it with me, then I think we can do it.
I actually don't remember this song at all. I would love it if anyone could just hum the tune a little bit for me, honestly.
Carolina, you
Definitely
can. Carolina, you can
hummers.
do it. Come on, I love your voice. Your singing
Yeah.
voice is.
We have a professional, Grace.
Oh,
You know.
Grace. Go on.
Oh,
No, Tahil, you're actually a professional. You could definitely you could definitely hum it. If you don't want to sing it, you can do the rhythm.
I don't know this song too.
Oh, okay, fine.
don't worry, I've solved
Yeah.
it. I've got it.
I actually don't know
included it in
the song
message.
either. So,
Give me love, give me love, give me peace on earth,
On
give
earth,
me light, give me life,
Life.
keep me free from
Free
birth.
from-
That's it. I think, does
Give
that
me-
ring a bell?
great.
And
Yeah,
then,
You
yeah.
step,
But I
you
thi-
stepped
I-
up to the plate.
Yeah, I was actually enjoying Chris's recital of it
Monotone.
no, you were kind of reciting it as a poem. It's actually quite a good
It-
reading of it. I actually
Exactly.
thought it was quite powerful. So please carry on. I was
Yeah.
enjoying that, Chris. Carry on with the
Yeah,
poem
yeah.
reading.
Well, that's kind of what struck me whenever I was like, oh, I want to go check the lyrics on this. And then whenever I was reading it, I thought this is actually as good as a poem. So yeah, I agree. He said, he continued to say, trying to touch and reach you with heart and soul. And then please take hold of my hand that I might understand you. Won't you please, oh, won't you give me love, give me love. And then he goes back into give me peace on earth. And it's just such a beautiful outpouring of a song. And how many people would have been touched and reached by this that wouldn't have any idea of all the backstory to George Harrison and SRF and Yogananda? And he's been able to reach people and touch them in this way. And we're talking about doing that practice of the meditation and visualizing people all over the planet. And there's George doing it through song. So beautiful.
And he did it very beautifully, must say. We talked about lovely George before in the podcast. He deserves his own podcast, I think. Yeah, River.
You know what? I'm sorry if you have talked about it. This is probably a redundant question, but I was going to ask beyond the film. I didn't actually know what his. I always felt I knew that George Harrison was connected with the Hare Krishna kind of movement. I didn't know that there was much of a connection. Does anybody give me a little backstory?
Yeah. Well, we've talked about it maybe in minutes. I'm just searching minute 57.
No, it's
and,
very early on. It was very early on,
uh,
I think.
Yeah. I think he appeared in the first sort of 5-10 minutes to me. But he was a devotee, and he was going to the Mother Center in person, and his son, I believe, is or was a devotee as well of the SRF. So he was quite involved with
Yes.
SRF.
Minute 4, we discussed him
Minute 4.
with his song "My Sweet Lord," which is River. That is a very powerful song, "My Sweet Lord." I really want to see you. And the words to that are probably even more powerful than this one. And he also donated a large part of his estate, I believe, to in his will to Self-Realization Fellowship. But they keep it under wraps, I believe, all that stuff for political reasons.
He did
probably.
when he was still active. He talked about the autobiography of a yogi in interviews. That's how my mom found out about Yogananda. Yeah.
And he was in this. Obviously, he was in the film. So that's on a few occasions. So yeah, highly recommend listening to George Harrison more so than the Beatles in general. Yeah, and then there's a nice song like right at the end before the credits finish. Om Sita Krishna Sita Ram, something like that. I couldn't find the actual song, but if anyone can find that, I tried to Shazam it, but it didn't work, and it's not in the book of credits. So it's like this secret song that they don't want us to know about.
It's like the words are Sanskrit and the you know the Indian gods, but the music is very Western. So it's very nice, actually, very nicely done. So yeah, so let's talk about the credits. Credits has a few interesting people that we've had to deal with. Oh, Tahil, please.
No, I was thinking now that you were talking about Krishna, I'm reading the Krishnavatara, like the story about Krishna, because when one reads the Bhagavad Gita, it's interesting and very great. But sometimes one needs to read like a book, like a story, and to say, whoa, and you feel like into the story. And all the time they are talking about that bad things that happens also come from God, and that's a difficult thing to accept. Like, you know it and you say yes, that's true, but in our mind we always think, well, good things come from God and bad things, and they had a very great acceptance of like, for example, Kunti, the mother of Arjuna, always time says to Krishna, please give us like problems to make us be closer to you, and that's difficult to accept or to ask for that. I just want to see.
Yeah, the Krishna stories, I think, absolutely love. I think I could just continuously read Krishna's pastimes, but I yet to find like a telling of the story of Krishna that's palatable. Like obviously Guruji talks mostly about the philosophy of God talks with Arjuna, but to find one that's not like, you know, just really like miraculous and, you know, lots of discussion about the gods and all his powers, and that's usually the ISKCON version is just full of that, so I couldn't really connect to it. But yeah, Tahil, did you have a response? I thought you had your hand up. Maybe not.
No.
Maybe not. Your English. Oh, Grace has to leave. Grace, we shall see you next time. Thank you very much. Thank you for gracing us again.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, Mark has joined us. Mark, how are you today?
Oh, hi everyone. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. We're just discussing the credits of the film. Mark, if you've got any comments about the credits, please do weigh in. There's lots in the book. There's lots of references to the Ghosh family, and Ghosh is obviously the family of Guruji's. Mukundalal Ghosh was Guruji's name, and so that would imply that lots of his, brothers and sisters, descendants, would have somehow helped in the film. But I tried to Google it, but there was not much of information available. So if anyone knows how the Ghosh family helped the film, then please do let us know. Potentially with pictures and access to various property, perhaps, I don't know. But that was the credits. I thought we'd talk about the feedback that we've received. So firstly, Marguerite has been the most
Can I say I thought that
oh yeah, go Mark,
I like
please.
the music on the credits.
Yes. Which bit?
How many bits were there?
There was 2 bits. So there was
Were
there was 2 bits. So we just discussed just before you came in, we discussed
Oh.
this. So there was George Harrison's bit, give me love, give me peace. And then there was this other there's 1 minute of another chant. There's an Indian chant about Om Shri Krishna Ram. It was about it was that type of chant, but we couldn't find it as to where who sung it or who produced it. But yeah, so there was another element.
Was that on the end? Was that after
Yeah,
George? Because I just remember George, that song, and I thought it was an interesting choice.
Oh, Mark, we actually were looking for someone to sing. None of us volunteered to sing it. But I know, Mark, you have a beautiful singing voice. Would you like to offer us just a small snippet of that song, a cappella?
I don't know if I can remember. Let me just get the lyrics up.
Ooh, we can send them to you back here.
We've got them.
Oh,
Here you go. We'll send them. We'll send them here. Look at the chat box.
You were waiting. This
There you
is
go.
scary. Okay. Wait a minute, Priyank, you have a lovely singing voice.
Yeah, I already did it. But I only did like 3 lines. But your voice is far superior. I actually take a lot of inspiration from you. I'm a harmoniuming.
Oh, bless you.
Shameless.
It's a joy to play the harmonium, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Something happens when that thing starts breathing. But that's another conversation. All right. Give me love, give me love, give me peace on earth. Give me light, give me light, give me light. Keep me free from birth. Give me hope, help me cope with this heavy load. Trying to touch and reach you with heart and soul.
Beautiful.
Bravo.
Beautiful.
Bravo.
Beautiful, Mark.
Something.
What an absolute contribution he's made to this podcast and literally just being in it for 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm off now.
End on a high. Mark, Mark, you won't know this, but you know when I think you taught me which one. You taught me a chant. I can't remember which one. Anyway, you taught me.
Was it either from this
Lotus Feet of Thy Guru? Think ye,
or deliver us from delusion?
Yeah, that's it. Think ye in thy heart, lotus feet. That one. You taught it to me, and Mark does this beautiful alternate rendition. And he plays it with chords rather than, you know, a simpleton like myself just playing the melody with the keys. He plays it with chords. So because Mark is musically very capable. And then I videoed him playing it with the chords, and then I learnt it.
Did you, sir?
Yeah, I did. Yes, I took my phone out and videoed you doing it. Just your hands, just your hands. And then I learned it, and then I played it next time I was at the service. I played it, and then collared me after the performance and said, "What is this?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a rendition. It's the chord version of the same chant." And she's like, "No, the melody is completely different." So I got busted, Mark, because of you.
Oh, interesting. Interesting take on it. I mean, I play with devotion. I'm playing, you know, I say to her, look, I'm not playing for you, I'm playing for them, right? So get out of that. And it's true, you know, and I try and make it as devotional as I can. It's just because look, it's my offering, right? That's how it is. But
we digress. Mark Tahiel is a professional musician. He's a conductor, aren't you, Tahiel? What is your opinion on people varying the musical melody in this way, Tahiel, of some of our cosmic chants? Have you done it yourself?
Well, it depends on the context who are to do it. I think that when we are in the temple, probably we have to do everything like with more rules. But if you are given to God and to the masters, if it has devotion, I think it's enough. If you maybe sing with no devotion, maybe it's bad. But if it has devotion and it's not just to say, look at me, I'm doing that and that, I think everything is legal and okay. No, I love to, for example, I love to give, like, how to say it, like to give it, like, for example, you have music from your country. For example, I play the charango, that it's an instrument from here, from Latin America, and I love to play the cosmic chants with the rhythms from my country, with the instrument from my country, and I don't think it's bad to give variations and chord variation. I think it's okay if you're active to this.
I think there is a case definitely for keeping it fairly tight, because, you know, in my head I'm always harmonizing, and there's part of me that desperately wants to hear those chants with 2 or 3 voices and a more lush arrangement or strings or something going on to make them expansive. And it's like, no, we just got to stay there because we're not actually supposed to be focusing on the music.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Chris.
I don't have an opinion on this. You'll be happy to hear. I'm not taking sides on any side, but something that does stick to my mind when thinking about this is Guruji saying that sing with devotion, sing with all your soul. Don't mind if you're off tune. Basically, that's not what it's about. It's about that pure devotion. And he maybe wasn't a professional singer himself. So my question to you guys is, if it matters, if the notes matter on the playing the instruments, is the instrument of the voice, does that matter as well? Like, is it not the instrumental orchestra is in its entirety to be considered? Because if so, then Yogananda himself said about the voice, just sing with devotion, sing with your soul. So I give that contribution.
Mike, any rebuttal?
No, I'll think about it while I talk about the point in general, because I actually do have an opinion, because I've been to many different centers and I've heard versions of the cosmic chants that were so far off what I thought they should be that I really appreciated how in the London Center, and as I see it from the SRF temples, they don't diverge one bit from the canon during services. They do during kirtans.
Carolina?
Yeah, it's funny because I was just thinking about this yesterday, because I actually left. I was on a online meditation and the chant was just going so off, like completely, and I couldn't concentrate on it. And I was just like, okay, that's it. I'm just gonna drop out of this, and kept on my own. And then I started to think about it, like, why did I get so at the point of leaving the thing, and I got a little upset. But I think it was because before SRF, I used to go to this sort of church we have here, and they're so strict with the chants, like you cannot move out of the, of the original arrangement. And especially the speed also, you should keep the speed, because there's actually like scientific things behind these songs, And sometimes I'm talking about like a service, like at home, do whatever you wish, if you want to. I play here sometimes reggae with the chants, It's not like I'm not criticizing who does this or that. It's just really on the service when you're trying to concentrate and go deep. I think it makes a lot of difference if you keep like the pace of the song, and for example, sometimes people repeat certain parts of the chant and they just going on and on and on. They go into like a trance, but you're not in that trance. And then you just listen to the person, is like, okay, so can we move on to the next? And it's hard to follow the whole thing, and you're just not concentrating. I'm just concentrating on like this. Oh my God. It's funny that you brought it, because yesterday I was feeling a little bit like, oh, you shouldn't have left the meditation for that, but I got so like, it was just ruining my concentration, and I left the thing. But it's an interesting thing to think about when you are at a service, because of how they make these songs, these chants. They have like a scientific background. Like he didn't make that thing out of nothing. It really came from the divine or something, and it makes more sense to follow it as it is during the service. Maybe that's my personal opinion.
In the defense of this rendition, it wasn't like wildly different. Tahir?
Oh, I was thinking when she talked about the speed, it's very interesting, because when you listen to master playing the harmonium or even Dayama, they start to play faster and faster and faster, and you say, whoa. And yeah, like very attuned with that feeling, and I think it's great when you are in a kirtan, and it's not just to look to like an ability to show how fast you play. It's like a feeling that you feel. I think that when these variations come from a deep feeling, and it helps to be more inspired, they are great. If they are not just to show like, look, I can do that. I think that's the only difference. If it helps you to be more attuned, it's great. If it makes you to be more like to pay more attention to the music than to God, that's the problem. I think that's that. If not, I don't like to be a music police. I like to enjoy it and to be free.
Very well said, Tahiel. Mark?
It's different if it's in the temple and there are people with you, but if you are alone, if you're with your friends, I think you can make a cosmic chant, make it a cover, or to sing it with 5 voices, I don't know. But if you forget God, that's the only problem you can.
Yeah. Tahiel did a beautiful opening. You played one of the native. What was the instrument called again, Tahiel? The instrument you played when you that little flute type, the 3-way flute. There it is. Yes. Yeah. Mark, you were saying?
Was I? Yeah. No. I mean, we have to. You're right. We're there to. I always think to push people into the astral when we chant. Just with the meditation, the chant should just gently just ease them into the silence. That thing, and as such, it's not about us. It's not really particularly about the chant, as you say. They're masters' creations, and they've been kind of based on very high science. That said, there's always, not always, but most of the time, there's somebody will tell you afterwards what you're doing wrong. It's not the police. Someone someone will come up to you and go, "Oh, you're not playing that right." I thought, "Okay, all right, thank you very much." Everyone has their own kind of take on it, and I just think it is our job to, within that framework, just help people into their meditation. That's it.
Riva?
I was going to say, I've obviously been lucky enough to be at services where you and like Priyank have like led the service, and I always feel like when you do the chants are amazing. So maybe us people who want to give the positive feedback should be more vocal about that as well.
It's nice to hear.
Like I can remember some of yours like so clearly, and I also feel happy when I see you leading it.
Well, thank you very much.
When you do
it's a joy to play. It is really. Thank you very much.
Your little ad-libs in the announcements.
Yeah, I love those as well. Yeah,
I really
Mark really mixes it up. It's fantastic.
What?
Yeah, when you when you just change like the way the announcements are done and add little quirky things that make people laugh. Oh, you master must be doing it, because it is fantastic work.
It's really funny.
Like whenever I'm doing the announcements, I think of ways to make it interesting. I think, oh, this is pretty boring. But Mark, you just do it with a plum.
You do.
With a plum.
There's one you do, and you always do it differently as well. Like the one that you always do about, because obviously at the moment we've got the windows open, but you always like say that in a different way when you're like, it can be a bit cold. It's not that cold today, but it can be cold. You can bring a jacket.
Even the Gita readings, you add little really cool variations to our Krishna. If you want to see Mark and Riva, by the way, and Chris and Mike, log into Krishna Talks with Arjuna on Instagram. It's the place to be.
Which is a whole other beautiful conversation.
Exactly.
That series. My goodness.
We'll end it on one note. This is fitting that this is our last episode, and this was probably one of the biggest segues in the history that.
I'm sorry.
Podcast. Mark comes in, adds the quirk of himself, And there's this huge, fantastic segue. And I know we're going to get some comments saying this is the favorite part of the podcast for us, because it was just a beautiful conversation. But anyway, I'll add one more final thing, hopefully, if you'll allow me. So we're at the silent retreat this weekend. And Ben, someone asked me if I could play the drum. And I said, yeah, I can, but I've only played it a few times. I'm not very good. He's like, yeah, but there's no one. We're really struggling for Kirtanias at the London Centre. So if any listeners can play a Kirtan instrument, ideally the tabla or something like that. Yes, yeah. No, any London viewers, you don't need to move here. You need to just come and help us. But yeah, so I was like, yeah, I can keep a rhythm, i.e. just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. I could do that with a drum. Anyway, so then there was 3 chants. So I started with that and it went pretty well. And my wife looked at me, she was sitting meditating next to me going, well done. I was surprising you were able to do that. I was like, yeah, I was surprised as well. And the second chant, I started adding a bit of flair. I was like, oh, I'm getting, I could do that. And by the third chant, I was doing things I didn't know how to do. I was like adding like 4 or 5 different variations, exactly to Taylor's doing a good example of my video. And I was doing like 4 or 5 variations. I was like, what, this can't be me doing it. It was such a beautiful experience. And my wife was like, how did you learn all that stuff? I was like, I don't know.
It's your one of your many incarnations coming back to provide some value.
So yeah, and I thought I might get a bit egotistical. I thought I might, we've got a London Centre Kirtanias group on WhatsApp, because we've got this, so I might say now I know how to play tabla professionally. Now anyone that needs, I thought no, that would be too egotistical. Let me learn it properly. Let me learn it properly.
Bring it back in.
Exactly. Anyway, going back to the feedback. That was 40 minutes ago. We were discussing feedback when Mark joined. So big thanks to Marguerite, who always provides feedback. She was at the start and had to leave. Maria, she provides some beautiful inspiration for us in terms of how she's how she's experienced the podcast, and her comments always add so much value and substance to the conversation that we're having. And we always get some really beautiful feedback. There was a lady called Corey who just emailed just a day ago, and we were having really big philosophical discussions about why we're doing this and what we should do for our next project and things like that. And her email, Corey, your email came at literally the perfect time, and she said along the lines of I used to visit a center that was close to me often, but now I can't, for whatever reason I'm not able to visit the center, and I missed the fellowship, and I missed these these conversations, and listening to this podcast. And she personally views them on on her TV or whatever, so she feels like she's in the room, and she really finds a lot of value from it. And we thought, isn't that absolutely beautiful? That's part of this fellowship. This is self-realization fellowship, and this fellowship element is something in this digital age we're only now really expanding, with this online meditations and this online podcast now that we're doing. So thank you very much, Corey. And also Rodrigo, big shout out to one of our guests, Rodrigo. He likes virtually everything I do on social media, as does Carolina, but Rodrigo is on another level. Thank you very much. So, and one bit feedback that I do want to discuss, and Riva, Tahil, Mark, and Carolina, you can weigh in on this. So this is about qualification, and this is an important topic. I don't want to discuss it just out on a whim, but I can speak for Chris and Mike. We're not qualified to discuss the majority of the things that we're discussing. Obviously, some very profound things that Guruji writes about. Even at this, we talked about today, Guruji said in this minute, everything is Brahma, everything is spirit, everything is light. And then we tried to elaborate on that and bring in Guruji's teachings around those very complex topics, but we are not qualified for that. So we have had comments in the past which have challenged our qualifications, and in my opinion, and this is partly why we continue doing this podcast, where not just stop when we get that kind of feedback, because it is legitimate feedback. When we have a conversation or when we interact with people or at work, we're far from perfect in virtually every interaction, that we have, right? And we can't do things in a perfect way, but that does not mean that it isn't of value. And I discussed the feedback that we received and how much is adding to some listeners' lives, if I could say that. But yeah, so the questions we always ask ourselves when we were doing this podcast is, are we growing? Are we learning? Are we growing? And personally, I've read so much of Guruji's teachings through this podcast. It's really been life-changing for me. Secondly, are we enjoying it? And I think you can probably see from our conversations that we do actually enjoy every single minute of this. And thirdly, this is related to the audience. Are the audience learning and growing, and are they enjoying it? And if the answer is yes to all those questions, then we should carry on. So Riva and Tahil and Mark and Carolina, being independent, what do you think about that type of feedback? Chris, do you want to weigh in before hopefully one of them says something?
You're putting them on the spot, yeah.
Yeah.
I think if it wasn't obvious that we're not qualified to really lead any discussions, I think that's painfully obvious. But really, for me, what you said there about growing, I haven't been to the London Centre in a long time. I moved out of London a few years ago and moved to Brazil, and I've been all over the place. So London Centre and what Riva was kindly saying about Mark, I miss a lot of the energy there. And that, Mark, I loved your contribution there and everybody else's contribution there. And that was a real anchor. I used to describe it as an anchor, spiritual anchor for me. And this is now become like a spiritual anchor for me, where you're connecting with Guruji in your own way. You take from it what you will. And that's simply the contribution that I feel, I can make, is just my own connection, and other people bring their own connection. And together we have this community, this great SRF community online. And that's what it's about for me. So.
Thank you, Chris. Riva?
Very quickly, I'd say, I've been on one ep of this, and I remember it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed this as well, and I love listening to you guys. And I think in Guruji's quote of don't take life too seriously, I think this is a really nice space for people who have like a shared love and a shared devoteeship to kind of discuss and talk, and that's not something you get a lot in life. So I think it's a really special place. So yes.
Thank you, Riva. Chris, do you want to come back in before Carolina comes?
No.
Okay.
Come back to me at the end.
Carolina?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what Riva said. It's an informal thing, and sometimes we take things too serious. And after all, we are analyzing a documentary which is out there to the public. It wasn't made by monastics alone. It was made also by people who are not even devotees of Yogananda. So I think there's a lot of involvement. And in the end, everyone is Guruji's child, everyone who's participating either on the movie or on the podcast. And also, I think that as a devotee, I am aware of Guruji's recommendations for me, and listening to the podcast just really makes me, well, like what Marguerite said, it's entertaining, it's funny, because it's what we would talk together at a meeting at a temple maybe, or at a meeting at each one's house. So it really makes us, at least for me, it makes me feel a connection with you and everyone who participated as brothers and sisters on the path. And so I'm aware of what Guruji said. So I'm not gonna take that and interpret as something completely different. You must learn how to separate things. One thing is a podcast where everybody's having fun. Another thing is sitting seriously trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita. At least for me, I put a little separation on that, but I'm very thankful to be part of this. And also for, I think the greatest thing for me from this podcast was really instigating on me some reflections that, you know, the conversations bring up, and really digging deeper inside of me on things that maybe I wouldn't think of if I wasn't hearing a conversation. Or it just really, it added a lot to my life. So I thank you guys.
Oh, thanks, Karina.
I think we should do a second one.
We'll get to that, Karina. Mark, you're muted. And by the way, everyone, this wasn't this genuinely wasn't a way to try and just get compliments from people on this podcast. This was a way to actually have a constructive conversation on honest.
As a true engineer, yeah.
Yeah, Mark.
Well, I echo what Carolina and Reba had said. And also Chris, I think it's interesting that 2019 is another world now. We can't go back. In a sense, it seems to belong to another time, and since when SRF has gone digital and therefore global, and this idea that people can tune in and feel the love and absorb the knowledge from anywhere in the world at any time, I think it's a huge leap forward. It allows people to also discuss master's work, and I always have the feeling that we're not really encouraged that much to discuss this, and I can understand why, but at the same time I think there's a lot of benefit to be had from, like as you say, like a serious but also informal situations where you can actually help each other to clarify things for each other and have it dive a little deeper into the teachings. And as Carolina just said, like the ripples and resonances that come out of what other people have to say, I think it adds more layers, it adds richness and meaning to the whole experience. It's like with Master's work at the center, these concentric circles of meaning and understanding around it, which I think are beautiful, and this podcast is a great example of that, I think.
Very sweet, thank you, Mark. Mike?
Yeah, thank you everybody for the feedback. I can say from my point of view, it's like twofold. One side is obviously, like Chris and Priyank said, I think I had a blast doing this, and otherwise you don't produce like 90 episodes over the course of like 2 years. Like we were really enjoying it, and we kept also mentioning to each other that researching Guruji over and over and over again is really helpful. It's like, for me, it completely changed my view on a lot of things, and a lot of the theories that I had, I could either by reading more, I was able to kind of either say this was wrong, or I was able to say, yeah, and I even have an example, Guruji did this in his life. So I feel like I'm a lot more spiritually literate since I started this podcast. And on the other side, I must say I sometimes listen to them myself when I'm in the car, or when I'm just to get some spiritual content in my living room, or because I do listen to the autobiography of a yogi audiobook quite often, but like this is just something different, and I'm appreciative of that. And if I wasn't on it and someone else was doing that podcast, I would probably also listen to it, because I really like having content with like people who, like everybody said, not qualified but sincere, and really trying to dig into the knowledge of Yogananda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mike. Sorry, Chris.
I was thinking of reflecting before I came on for this like final minute, what was maybe my takeaway, my best bits or something like that, on the topic of what Carolina said. And my mind immediately was jumping from one episode to another, like, oh yeah, this was really fun to go into this topic or that topic. And you had Rauda and Sonny and Masvidal and Professor Clooney, and Phil Goldberg was amazing as well, and Walter Cuttington was probably my favorite special guest that we had on. Like these guests actually came on the show and took their time, and their devotion for the subject continued, not just for the actual Awake minute by minute documentary that they did themselves. But what really stood out to me was all the little moments of all the guests that came on. Everybody had something to share on, from one moment to the next, like an insight. It's really awesome to have that, because we all have divineness shining through us, and it shines maybe brighter than other times, than sometimes. And everybody was able to have their moment to share some really great insight. And everybody did contribute to that really well. So every single guest on the show really made it for me. So thanks to everybody that managed to take the time to come on, everybody here today. So it was really awesome to see a lot of little synchronicities that everybody had for coming on the show. We had many little moments of synchronicities that were really fun to experience as well. So yeah.
Indeed. Thank you, Chris. Well said. And with all that feedback in mind, we are pleased to announce Tehiel, please.
Oh no, I actually wanted to say, I think like Carol, I feel that this podcast has the same spirit as the young adults meetings. Like when you go there, you know that all things that are important to know, they are in the lessons. So when you go to a meeting or you go to listen to a podcast, you are looking for inspiration. You know that all what you have to do, you have it in the lessons, you have it in the books, in the talks by Guru. So I think that it's great. If it inspires us, it's great. And like Carol says, everyone knows that if you have a doubt, you have to ask yourself, to look in the lessons, to ask to Gurudeva's help. So I think it's a great podcast, and it has a potential. Like people will be able to listen to it or to watch it again and again, and new people. It also has a lot of great material for future satsangas, for monks. Like I remember a time there was a devotee that was talking about being a disciple, son of disciples. And there were a lot of details, very interesting and important, about how to teach or to show, to present the teachings to a son or a daughter, and maybe from a point of view that maybe monks can't share because they are monks. And I think it's great to have all this material and to use these tools to help the devotees. And I don't know how to. It's difficult to me to express in English, but I'm very thankful with everything, and I think it's great.
Tehiel, you criticize your own English, but it's fantastic, and you don't need to worry about that, Tehiel. It's beautiful, and your comments were very welcome as well. And especially I found it interesting that you said that monks aren't, even if they wanted to, they can't speak about other things, like, for example, other books from other organizations. They can't talk about them, even though they may read them themselves. They can't talk about them because SRF is SRF, right? But we're obviously, as lay disciples, free to do those things. And and we obviously have taken that liberty and then some in this podcast, shall we say. I really love, Tehiel, that the wildlife in your next to you was fully agreeing with everything you were saying. They were like cheering you on. It was really good. There was some really fantastic bird near you. I don't know if you can tell me what that bird was. I'm very much into birds. I'm a member of the RSPB. But anyway, that's another topic. Feedback. thank you very much for all that feedback. And really, I want to talk about our next project briefly. So this, hopefully you'll be pleased to know that this is not the end. We didn't know it at the time, but that was apparently, Carolina, thank you for clapping. This was not the end. We didn't know it at the time, but this whole 18 months was series 1. We now intend to go to series 2. And you may say there is, Teo's thumbs up. You may say that there is no series 2 because Awake does not have a sequel. But it does. The sequel is the ultimate sequel, and the ultimate sequel is the autobiography of a yogi. And that is hopefully what we shall do our next series for the podcast on. People are, thank you, Carolina. She's cheering us on like a good Brazilian cheerleader. What is the context of that? And it will follow much the same context and the approach that we've taken for the Awake film. So here, for example, today we talked for perhaps half an hour about Guruji saying everything is Brahma, everything is spirit, everything is light. And let's put that into the context for the autobiography of a yogi. So the first few chapters of first few paragraphs in the first chapter, i.e. my parents and early life. So Guruji talks in the first lines about the concomitant guru-disciple relationship. Now, you could write a book on that subject, and Guruji has written a book on that subject, and how long is a piece of string? That's how long you could talk about that subject. And it's not that we want to just talk about things for infinite time. It's that we want to really share our experience and our feelings of concepts such as the guru-disciple relationship and what it has meant for us, and how we can enable it to grow. So these are the kind of conversations we want to have for that. And the second paragraph it talks about the great masters of India and of the ancient civilizations of Egypt and Babylonia. And these are very, very complex subjects, I'm sure you'll agree. And again, you could talk for an infinite time about that. And not that we want to, but we may, for example, talk a little bit about Egypt. I know Chris is very fascinated by Egypt and the Egyptian mysticism and science and astrology and all those great things. The third paragraph is Guruji saying that he has clear recollections of being a yogi amidst Himalayan snows. Now that, if anyone has been to India, you would have seen that is a very common sight, the yogis amongst the Himalayan snows. And again, we can spend, I don't know how long, talking about that. Personally, that is a topic of huge interest to me, having explored a lot of that part of the world. So again, this is really, it goes back to the 3 core things. Are we learning? Are we growing? Are we enjoying it? Yes. Is the audience engaged? So for that reason, we should hope that this podcast, which is really going to be a book club, a fellowship, Autobiography Yogi podcast book club, or a fellowship, with fellowship, I should say. So that's what the project will be. And, I've just talked about 3 lines there. And this is even before talking about the fantastic preface to the Autobiography of Yogi. And there's before talking about the front cover of the Autobiography of Yogi, the title, the back page. These are all things that we may just gloss over. We may have read the book 100 times, but we may have ignored the acknowledgement in there to Luther Burbank, for example, and what that actually means, that he acknowledged the treatise of the Autobiography of Yogi to Luther Burbank. So there's all these little nuances and intricacies that really we want to dig and explore, and hopefully we mine some beautiful jewels of a spiritual awakening for each of us that are on the podcast, and hopefully for listeners as well. That's me talking a lot, but Carolina, why don't you tell us about what your reflections on that are? I've put Carolina on the spot.
On series 2 and 3 and
the
next one. I'm totally supportive. Yeah, I think it's amazing. They're actually reading the autobiography now, right? And they're going to finish it in January. on Master's birthday. So I think it will bring like that whole reading into like a one huge, a line of podcast on the autobiography. So I think it's amazing. I'll listen to it.
We don't know how long this project is, nor do we care.
I think Mark suggested the Holy Signs up next, so that's it's a whole smaller book, but that can take just as long.
Tehiel?
I want to know what are your favorite chapters from Atrafia, or is it a spoiler?
Yeah, that is a spoiler. That's one of the questions we're going to ask in the introduction episode to ourselves. Unfortunately, now Chris and Mike know one of the Hospital Paths questions that I was going to ask them.
we already know what Mike's is. He said it a few times on this podcast. So.
Yes, yes, indeed. And that really is everything that we wanted to talk about in today's 2-hour long episode that we did not intend to be this long, but it has become that way. So unless there's anything else that anyone else would like to say, I should say thank you very much on behalf of all of us, all the guests, all the Self-Realization Fellowship and the Awake Film for joining us in this film, and so many people we've actually directed. They've seen a little snippet of what we've discussed, and we've been asked to direct them as to where they can watch the film, and of course we point them to the yogananda.org website. So that's been really good, actually introducing people to the film. So it's what a nuance, isn't it? A podcast that introduces people to the film, potentially then introduces people to the autobiography of Yogi. That's quite a cool aspiration. And let us end with perhaps the last line in the credits, and it is a beautiful line. Chris, would you like to lead it? Would you like to read it? It's on the last card, and we shall end it there.
Absolutely. Deepest gratitude to Paramahansa Yogananda and all the masters who help us become awake. Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Jai Ma.